Hello. Hopefully this is functioning because I don't even know why it died just a second ago, to be honest. But I'm also not a professional streamer, so I just restarted it and it worked. And we'll claim that that is a technical fix. I turned it off. I tried turning it off and on again, and functioned.
I
So
feel like it crashed because you turned off your Ethernet real quick because you were losing to a modest Alakazam in Let's Go Eat.
yeah, I don't even have the new Pokemon games actually. So there we go. Um, I don't know. I'm excited for the full game, but I'm not really. I never played Pokemon Go really, so I'm not worried about it. Anyways, this is Your Brand, Your Business. I'm Galen Herbst Cortina. I'm a financial planner who works with a bunch of streamers, and today we are going to be talking about taxes because who doesn't love taxes? The main focus is going to be a brief overview of the U.S. tax laws that have changed for streamers, which we've already covered in the past and more in depth. So it's going to be an overview. And then we're going to let Ernest, my co-host, who will introduce himself in a second, complain a lot about some of the changes that they said that they were going to make that would improve things, which ended up being, what would you say? It ended up being like when you just add a bunch of extra longer thesaurus-y words to a paragraph and claim that it's longer or
It's
better or something like that.
mechanically, and we'll get into it. It's pretty stupid, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
My name is Ernest Jones. I am a certified public accountant focusing on tax. I work with a bunch of streamers, assisting them with tax compliance in the United States, tax planning, some minimal business consulting stuff. Really, that's more Galen's purview, but I touch some of that stuff as well. And yeah, we're here to talk about the tax changes. So, disclaimer time, because it's a very technical topic. This is specifically for United States taxes. This is considered educational in nature, and it is not considered unique or specific to your own situation. So, don't talk about anything personal about your own tax
Yes.
situation here. Oh, wow, aren't we fancy? It's almost like we're
I misspelled disclaimer at first, but then we got it.
are we semi-professional?
Semi-professionals. We've done this enough times before.
But that's the key thing. So this is just educational in nature and not specific to your own unique circumstance.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. So you may know I wrote an article back when the tax law kind of changed
Yeah.
way back when, back in December of 2017. And part of the reason we're covering the topic today is because let's go on one of our tangents. Let's get one out of the way. Galen, what's your opinion of Twitter?
Twitter is the thing that I waste the most time on, probably.
Okay.
It is a great way to connect with people and is far too, even with the doubling of character counts this year, far too limiting in terms of having really good nuanced discussion. Because it's so easy to send things viral that you probably don't also catch any sort of like clarifications or addenda or anything like that unless the person intentionally threads it from the start.
Exactly. So I'm going to give an example of that. So the one thing that spurred that article way back when, and this discussion today, was that, do you remember, Galen, when the new tax law passed? And I want to say it was like the week between Christmas and New Year's was when it officially passed. And everyone was saying, oh no, as streamers, we can't write off our home office anymore, right? And that was not true for streamers because of how that gets treated for different taxpayers. So it actually didn't change. And the lead-in I'd want you to take from this, if you're concerned about your U.S. tax situation, is that the fundamentals under the old rules haven't changed. I mean, fundamentally, it's pretty much the same. And the next question that I always get is, well, is the law going to actually help or hurt me? And in most cases, you can't say definitively because everyone's situation is different, is that this tax law is going to help you in that you'll pay less tax.
Yeah, the only way it wouldn't be helping you is if you're earning so much income that you're above certain thresholds. And at that point, you're earning more than enough money to hire either and probably both of us to help us get you around it where possible.
Yeah, there's a specific rule set for people who are going to probably pay more tax. And I say probably because, again, it depends. Is if you're single and you're in a high income taxing state. So if you're in California, you own a home in Texas or New Jersey, you're in New York City, and you're single and you do very well for yourself, that's
The
probably
midterms looked very negative for the party that passed the tax law in areas that had issues with the new salt tax caps.
yeah. And so another thing to talk about is U.S. taxes. It tends to be very political in nature. We're going to look at it very fundamentally in terms of just the tax impact. But to that point, if you look at like what happened in California, how many GOP reps are left from that? I mean, because that's not a political statement, just a matter of fact. I think in Orange County, right?
Yeah, they got nuked.
That's the one that comes to mind. Is that I think there are 8 representatives in and around what would be considered Orange County, and for those who don't know,
which is extremely conservative.
Extremely conservative and extremely well-to-do, very wealthy area, and they're feeling
very expensive houses.
Yep, and so they voted with their dollars by saying no, we don't like the tax law change.
Yeah, basically they put some caps on things that you could get reductions on SALT, state and local taxes, and your property tax and your state income tax were the things that were some of the biggest contributors to meeting that cap. And so if you're a high income earner with an expensive house, you got screwed. And so like you had a lot of people like that in very conservative areas of California who got dunked on.
Yep. Now, the other thing that we saw going around the other day, and it was funny because I had a prospective client reach out to me with this Twitter thread saying, hey, what do you think of this? And I gave them my thoughts, and I sent it to Galen because it's someone that could be, we both could theoretically work with. And Gail was like, oh, no, that's funny. I saw that too. And it's not that the information wasn't wrong. It's that it didn't tell the full story. And if you dived into the Twitter thread, there was like some back and forth. And the person, like Galen said when we were talking about it, did a good job of not digging in and acknowledging what the professional or alleged professionals on Twitter were saying.
They were someone who was trying to pass on helpful information to other people in their situation. So when there were clarifications that came in, they were like, wow, that's super helpful. Thank you. But you had to dig for it.
Yeah. And so the one thing, and the reason I asked what Galen thought of Twitter was that I think Twitter is a great tool for self-promotion, for memes, for, a quick kind of like in and out type of joke, and, discussion about live events. That's one thing I love Twitter for. Like if I'm watching a basketball game or a football game or something. And
if I'm watching a fire burn ever closer to my house, it's very useful.
It is terrible for getting the full facts on how to treat something. So what this tweet was saying was that, hey, if you make a certain amount of income, you don't have to report or you don't have to file. I may be misconstruing it, but it'd be very easy from that tweet to take the wrong message away and then not properly address your taxes. So to address that, I'm biased. If you're a U.S. person, I'm always going to say whether you have a filing requirement or not, it's better to file. And the reason for that is because the burden, so in a court of law, we're not lawyers. Joel would get very mad with me, but there's a burden of proof that's on the prosecutor or the plaintiff to prove that they've been harmed or to prove that the defendant is guilty. That is not the case with tax law. The burden of proof is on the taxpayer to prove that they have filed everything out completely and done so accurately as well. So when it comes to that, I'm of the opinion that it is always better to have a filed position with the IRS as opposed to not, even if you're in a loss position, even if you didn't have any income, because once you do that, you start a statute that I believe it is 3 years in most cases before the IRS can go back and look at it. So in other words, if I file in 2020, they have until 2023 to look back at a return.
Yep.
Now, if I never file, well, they can go back forever. So that's the thought process there.
And I mean, if you truly operated at a loss, you might be able to get money back. So.
Yeah. And if you can't get money back this year, there's reasons to have that tax asset for future years.
Yep.
So that's kind of some of the things. Fundamentally, though, if you're doing this as a hobby or you're full-time, nothing really has changed big picture for you.
Yeah,
So
I'd say the biggest change would be the thing we alluded to, which is the qualified business income deduction, which is basically the thing that if you're under earning 157,500 single or 315K married, you get to pay less in taxes on business income.
yeah.
So that's I'd say the most notable thing. Again, unless you're running up against some of the other stuff they added in place, but
Yeah, that I would say for kind of who the show's geared towards, that's the biggest thing. I would say also the right, like a few, that would be number one, and then notches down 4 or 5 or 4. There's no 2 or 3. I would say is that entertainment expenses
oh, that's right.
gone. So, for example, if you and it's a weird kind of thing for
They can't take Ernest to a Lakers game, even though it would be a business meeting.
right. Now, here's the question though.
Or well, I could. I just couldn't write it off.
If you took me to a Lakers game and you streamed it, Galen, and you're an RL streamer and you got by
the
it,
NBA would come
they'd be
down on
very
me
mad.
hard.
Yeah, I'm sure all of our legal professionals that we're friends with are,
Yeah.
like they hear a whisper on the wind and they're like, what are Galen and Ernest doing?
What stupid thing are?
Are those 2 idiots talking about? But in that circumstance, let's say you had the full rights provided to you by the NBA. There was like a partnership and they wanted to like show off what these seats look like to an audience. And that's not that inconceivable, actually.
I will take on that gig if it's offered.
So,
I will. You know what? I'll even chill early. Staples Center has phenomenal garlic fries. So if they want to bring me there to talk about that, I'm in.
How is the Staples Center sushi?
I have not had the sushi there.
Well, fortune favors the bold, Galen.
I don't know if I'd want to have sushi at a thing. Anyways, we're off on some, I think, way off base on this, but basically there were some changes that, in general, mean that you are either earning so much money that you should hire one of us, or you're in a position where it probably lowered your taxes by lowering the brackets, by giving the qualified business income deduction for your streaming income. Those are the main changes. The one that we really wanted to let Ernest just tell you all about how much he loves it today is the new 1040, because one of the, I forget if it was a campaign promise or just early statements about the new tax law, is that we wanted to make it so you could file your taxes on a postcard or something like that, right? Like simplify tax forms enough that you could do it on a postcard, which they've made an attempt to do. As of right now, they don't have a final version of these forms, so we're going to be looking at and mocking the current draft versions.
Correct.
But I think the basic synopsis is, by what they meant is, we'll make it so you can file it on a postcard, is they just held a postcard up over the previous form and then just cut, and then moved it down and then just cut. So you now file it on 6 postcards instead of 1 form.
Correct. So
let's move over. Wait.
Oh.
Loco got us something fancy.
Oh boy.
Ta-da! We're now moved over to where you can actually see the form itself that we're talking about, the new 1040.
So
go.
So here's my rant about it, and this is not a political statement, is that fine, I'm all for making it easier to file taxes. It's bad for me professionally, but I'm all for that. I think there's in our country, and maybe this is steering political, is that it's too hard to file taxes now for most individuals. And so part of the reason they were arguing and debating about putting it on a postcard is that less is more. It'd be much more simple to file the way they've kind of drafted this form. So you can see here, what they've done is, this is the old top of the 1040. And before we dive in too deep, allow me to say that what this has done, in my opinion, is that this has made it tougher to jump out and get the numbers you need from a tax return. I can't say that I know how to read these forms yet, because number one, they're not finalized yet, so I'm not going to spend the time to learn them. And number two is, just because you shorten up the form, it doesn't make it easier to read. And actually, I have a third point, is that, Galen, have you ever seen a hand-filled out tax return?
No, and I hope to never. Oh my God. That would be awful.
So I actually have.
You mean
'cause
like pen on paper?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I've seen a few in my career. But the reason why you recoil in horror is why don't you think you've seen one in your career?
The same reason that my teachers starting in 7th grade were just fine with me typing up my essays. Because my handwriting is abysmal, and I'm sure everyone else's is, and I'm sure it doesn't scan great, and ugh.
Well, smarm aside, here's the
I'm also left-handed, so I tend to smear when I write because I am one of the discriminated against minority.
Don't worry, Flanders has a store just for you.
There's a lefty store in San Francisco.
Right, that exists?
Yeah.
Oh. Do you have lefty scissors yet?
I do. Okay. This is a tangent I will get into. I have a pair of lefty scissors that I've had since I was on my own in college. It's a very basic pair of scissors. My wife, at the time, girlfriend, moved in with me and then had the audacity to complain about my scissors. And it's like, listen, this is the only place where I get scissors that don't make my thumb all matched up when I try and use them and they actually work properly. And she had the audacity to complain about my lefty scissors when the rest of the world is hers. All right, that's all.
Listen,
I don't remember what we were talking about before.
What I want to have a montage eventually of all of our tangents, and that's the hammer tangent right there, right now. That's like the Oscars, the biggest person who passed away in the past year. Mm-hmm. That's that tangent. But the reason you don't see a lot of tax returns filled out in by hand is because most people, if not 99% of people, use some sort of automated software. So it's H&R or TurboTax or TaxSlayer or one of the other ones provided by the IRS if you're under a certain income threshold. And so putting it on one page or 18 pages doesn't matter. It's all automated when you fill in the data. So I don't really get, from my standpoint, what this accomplishes. So to me, this is ridiculous and stupid. And I'm not a fan of it. And it's not that I'm like against change, to be clear.
That was a really unnecessary third. It's ridiculous, stupid, and I'm not a fan.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of it. Yeah, that's what I do. So the top part on the screen this is just the top of the old 1040. And they've moved the signature page from from page 2 up into page 1. So all this does is it has your identifying information, your name, social, any dependents if you're claiming them, your filing status. There's nothing really changed with this old form. If you look at the old 1040, I mean, they moved the healthcare.
I'm not going to pull up a comparison. I'm not that advanced to do on the fly.
Yeah, but there's not anything drastically different here. Now, page 2, all this is the first part of the form. So you have lines 1 through 7, wages and salaries, taxes and interest. Now, here's where I go even deeper into my rant. So for most people in the US, most people tend to earn their money through a W-2 gig or multiple W-2 gigs.
Salaried, he means.
Yeah, you're an employee. And they withhold the tax for you and you typically get a refund. The reason this is extra stupid is because we already had a form that made it simple for those tax filers called the 1040 Easy. So I really don't get why we did this.
Because it's a postcard, Ernest. Yeah, duh.
It's so dumb. Now, here's the thing that I was trying to find.
It makes it simpler, quote unquote, if you were already simple, and more complex if you were more complex.
Very true. Now, I sent you a couple of links, Galen, so we'll see if you can, if we're pro streamer enough. So if you look at page 2 of the draft 1040 for 2018, you'll notice that there is not a line for your business income or your pass-through income. So if you're a hobbyist streamer or a full-time streamer, it used to be, Schedule C income, or you get it from a pass-through entity. Now, what they've done is they've removed that line here.
Which one are you looking for?
Schedule 1.
All right. Here you go.
So what they've done now
doing it live.
We're doing it live. sorry, I got like flashbacks because when I hear we're doing it live, that normally means our mage has hit heroism, and I need to like be doing things. So anyway, though, if you look at this form now, what this has is this has the income that you'd have from streaming, right? So say you netted, you're a hobbyist, and you do this on the side, and you make $5,000. That's great. That's fantastic. That's going to come in on line 12 there on the schedule 1 as it's proposed. Now, this is where it gets dumb. This form doesn't have any detail for your expenses. So what happens is, and this is tough to probably grab conceptually, is that first form we looked at is going to have the number that comes from your business, right? The Schedule C, the 5,000. This number is going to have the 5,000. And then you're going to have to go to Schedule C to find the detail on how that 5,000 was calculated.
Yep. This is Schedule 4, so.
It's so stupid.
Oh, this is the self-employment tax one.
Yeah, and so essentially what they've done.
There we go.
Is they've added a layer of detail, kind of like, I guess you would say a filter, and they shoved all of the detail back to supplemental schedules. So the first
supplemental postcard size schedules.
I mean, maybe.
Postcard-esque. This is longer than a postcard, that's for sure.
So if you're a hobbyist or full-time and you're worried about the new tax law changes, as long as you've been using software, you shouldn't see
the people who make software had a shitty update year.
Well, and I just had this thought is what you may see happen is oftentimes you'll see so I'm not a fan of the TurboTax or the free preparer type solutions. And you can say I'm biased, but part of the reason is because I'm not sure if you, Galen, you remember this, but I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, do you remember when there was a delay on being able to file certain state returns?
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that was because the free software providers weren't spending a lot of money on the security.
Yep. So
what was happening was taxpayers were getting their socials and identities stolen, and fraudulent returns were being filed on their name so that the fraudster could get like a small refund.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do remember that. There are all sorts of issues with your taxes being filed with your info, but not by you, so that people could get your refund.
Exactly. So think if you had, I mean, you can kind of do the math on it. Say you can get a $250 refund and you can compromise 1,000 people. Well, that's pretty good money that for nothing, too hard for you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what I expect is they're going to get more aggressive selling your information. I could be wrong on that. This is all speculation. Or they're not going to be free anymore for this year. They may end up charging you a small fee, or some maybe blend between the two. So that's why I'm not a fan of the free preparers. But again, I'm biased because I get paid the prep taxes. I don't think I'm biased in this case, but caveats are caveats. But key point again, I try to always have kind of a reference point when I go on my rants on the tax side of things, is that if you're filing in 2018 and you use a digital kind of service provider, be it TurboTax or H&R or one of the free ones, you're not going to see a big change in terms of what you're doing. It'll all spit out the same way. What you're going to have an issue with is
it'll be so much more annoying for me, and it has to be 10 times worse for you.
Yes, well, we'll get into that. So the reason it's tougher for you as a taxpayer is you're going to have to learn a new way to review your return, because I would never recommend
that, right, people? You review your return.
Yes.
Make sure it's good. See if there's anything you missed. Just remind yourself of things, right?
Double check the numbers. Make sure everything looks right. I can't tell you the number of times I've had a client say, "Oh man, I had a kid and didn't give it to you. Didn't give you their identifying information to get the tax credit for him or her." So make sure you review it. The software in most cases are pretty good, and you're going to be able to muddle your way, depending on how complicated your situation is, to an answer that's not much different than what I would come up with. So once you get to scale, and once you're full time, that's when it makes more sense in pulling in a tax preparer for those people who wouldn't, because that's a question I get all the time. It's like, well, when does it make sense to hire someone? It's always going to depend on how much you're juggling and how much time you want to spend prepping your taxes and doing this. And
which will be a little different than what it was before now with these new improved forms.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also to make sure you're maximizing that pass-through deduction for, but I'm interested to see how the software approaches it, because assuming you're not in the phase-out area, the 157 and the 315, it should be pretty straightforward.
Did they change the Schedule C, which is the business income one?
They shouldn't have. It should. The only thing that'll change is the meals line will change, I expect. And it'll still be the same detailed form. There shouldn't be any major changes there.
What if they make it postcard sized?
If they make it, I mean, you're trolling, but they may. I'm trying to think how they would do that. That's the thing. I don't think they can. But I could be wrong.
But yeah, the point being, I mean, as Ernest is saying, like, these two things here, this and this, were already the first two parts of the old form. They just now don't have the rest of it, and they move the rest of it off to here and here.
I fully expect them to merge those two pages. We were talking about this before the show started.
Yeah.
Because look at them. I understand they're going for the postcard, but there's so much white space between.
They'll just make it so it's just one page of 4 postcard sized things. Totally different than before.
I mean,
when it was one page that just happened to be 4 postcards in length.
Make it 0.2 font, and you can get it all on one page. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that people need to be aware of is that it's going to be, when you do your stuff this year, it's going to look a lot weirder, and not to freak out when it happens. This is kind of the informative thing. The business returns aren't changing, so those will still be the same if you're filing that way. If you've grown to the point where you need an LLC.
Button Mash Vixen makes a good point. Right off that microscope, you get to read the font for the new postcard-sized forms. At that point, hey, it might be a business expense, right? If you needed to read your tax forms.
Tax prep got nuked because miscellaneous deductions are no longer a thing.
That's right.
But you have to argue that it's a professional fee related to your business.
Which for you it would be for streamers, largely.
Well, you would probably need to do a Mr. Adam stream, just to be safe. Kids, we're going to look at some slides today.
Yeah. I forgot about that. That was the same thing happened to investment management fees, but that doesn't matter for me because I'm doing a lot more financial planning than I am investment management.
So let's see. Other takeaways I would say with the new tax year. So your business expenses have not changed other than that one carve out for entertainment. It's still the same ordinary and necessary test, meaning the way I explain it, I probably said this a million times on the show, is that it is not the clinical definition of ordinary and necessary. It is it helpful to what you do, and is it common in the industry? The question we get a lot, hey, can I write off my subscription to other streamers? Yeah. Can I write off my internet? Can I write off my telephone? Yeah, because I'd imagine, and now, again, this isn't specific to you, viewer, or listener. This is general advice. If you are streaming and you stream for 8-10 hours a day, and then you get off, you get some food, you unwind for a second, and then you're on your phone managing Discord or Twitter or Instagram or Friendster or Facebook or Tinder or whatever, all the platforms that you should have, you should be writing off a portion, if not all, of your phone.
I would probably get in trouble if I were using Tinder on my phone.
Yeah, well...
regardless of its business necessity. I don't think my wife would be too happy with that.
Listen, it's 2018.
She got to get with the times.
It could be a polyamorous relationship. You would have to talk about that right now, Galen.
I'm good.
Okay? So let me ask you something. So being kind of tax adjacent, what are some of the questions you've gotten from clients kind of regarding the new form or just the new tax law?
Nothing about the new form, mostly because, as you can see here, these came out July, August, based on that draft text in the background. And I have yet to meet a streamer who is excitedly looking at these things when they come out in draft form. On the tax law itself, like you said, the expense ones are basically always the biggest. Did anything change? Beyond that, actually what I've been getting a lot of questions about lately on the tax side, and is relevant to maybe a whole future discussion we could have, is about like people considering moving if they're full-time streamers, moving out of California to a low state income tax state, or moving to a place that, I think I was talking about this on Twitter a couple weeks ago, right, that does a program where they bring in remote workers or anything like that. Those have been the big ones, actually, that I've been getting lately, because they go, wow, I could save a lot, and that would be amazing, and I could use that money for things, because, I mean, I could use money for things, too.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that transitions us out of, I think that's a good topic we could talk about kind of as a 10 to 15 minutes before we kind of go to questions and then outros, but unless there's anything on the 1040 form you want to talk about.
Not really. The big ones that are still things that, one of the big changes that might impact some streamers but isn't certainly streamer specific is the alimony change. But I'm not too worried about that. One thing that I want to highlight, since we're here and it's super relevant right now, is this, just as this is a heads up, it only has tangentially to do with what we're talking about, is the self-employed health insurance deduction. We are still in open enrollment for America's terrible health insurance system, and if you are self-employed and don't have access to health insurance from another route, it is something that you should do, because it is a good idea. And, as this tax form that I have up so helpfully points out, if you're self-employed, you actually get a deduction for it, for the premiums rather, which is sweet.
Yeah, you should have it if you're in the U.S. You should have it. I've seen too many people not have something catastrophic happen and then not have good coverage, and it's not a good situation.
Yep.
So moving on from that then, so big picture, again, I've said it a million times now, nothing's going to change. You're going to use your software, your preparer, and just reviewing your return is going to be tougher.
Yeah.
The fundamentals of filing your taxes and preparing them haven't changed. And
if you were considering doing it by hand for some reason, don't.
Do not do that. There are free things. It's worth I think 50 is what it is on Amazon. Hashtag not sponsored, but at Amazon, if you want, I'm here.
It's a long hashtag.
So it's a long hashtag, yeah. Well, listen, it's for, it takes up mind space. So one thing you talked about, I want to touch on is the moving aspect of things. So if you're considering moving, I had this thought is that I've had some clients move. I've seen it on Twitter. They think they're getting a better deal on the internet. Double, triple, quadruple check that you are going to get the service that you need.
You mean the internet?
For your ISP.
Was the moving deduction a miscellaneous one? The former one?
It was an above the line deduction and it's gone.
Okay, that shouldn't impact streamers. But
it should not impact streamers. I would argue though.
So if you're married and you're trying to do this move, get your spouse to find. Oh, it's gone. I guess. Never mind. I take it back.
No.
It's
well,
gone.
I would argue.
Get your spouse to join the military.
Yeah, I would argue though that if you moved because of internet, like that is a business expense. Like say you're getting screwed by Xfinity or Comcast, which are one and the same. I don't know. I did that. Cox, Sprint, Verizon, whatever your ISP is, and it's ruining your streams and you move because of it, I would make the argument that is a business expense because you had to move to do your job.
Fair. I'll let you defend that one in tax court.
But it's something to be discussed, or at least take a portion of it.
Yeah, maybe. So the reason that I asked about that is previously, before this new tax law, if you were, and I'm remembering this off the top of my head, if you were moving for work and the place that you were moving was something like over 50 miles away and further and closer to your new place of employment than your current home was, you could write off a lot of the moving costs. And it was if you got a job within like 6 months of doing that. So when my wife and I moved from Wisconsin back home to California, she got a job shortly thereafter. We were able to actually write off a lot of those moving costs, which was great against our taxes for that year. That is gone. That's one of the things that's just poof. They needed to make the numbers look better, and that was a small thing that not many people cared about because it doesn't happen often. So they got rid of it, which is too bad, because then the joke I was alluding to earlier is if you were married and decided that you wanted to move somewhere else to avoid state income taxes, you could theoretically have your spouse change jobs, write it all off, and oh, hey, by the way, you moved too. But Ernest seems to be of the opinion that you might be able to do that anyway.
Well, so it wouldn't be the old classic moving expense.
Well, right. It'd be a business expense.
It would be a business expense.
You're sort of looping it in.
Exactly. So what I would say, if you're moving, is just the fact, double. I mean, I've seen, it seems like I see it once a day where someone is getting just destroyed by their ISP.
Grant Pooh Bear, former guest on the show, was complaining this morning about his internet being all sorts of messed up.
It's tough enough to stream and be successful at it, and without having to juggle the unreliability of an ISP. So just make sure you're covered there. I've had some clients who will have a bit like 2 ISP lines. They'll have like a business line, and they'll have a classic non-commercial residential line, and they'll toggle whenever they get throttled. So it's just one of those weird,
Makes sense.
So let's see, any other things you want to cover?
No, not really. I just wanted to go through the new 1040, sort of show why, even though it's new and improved and special, it's actually basically the same thing. They just took some scissors to it and made it a little more annoying for us.
And pasted it to other pages.
Yeah, exactly. But so this is something, I mean, ultimately, while we are annoyed with it and have expressed annoyment, both at the fact that it changed for us, as well as the fact that it didn't do anything, even though it was just shuffling, essentially.
Yeah, it's a campaign promise that doesn't improve anyone's lives.
Yeah. The good outcome from that, or at least not good outcome, the not bad outcome, is that it doesn't really change anything for you guys. At least it doesn't change anything for you guys that wouldn't have already been changed because of the new tax law anyways. So good news. So that's sort of the good news we were looking to pass along with this. While we are annoyed, and while it maybe makes it more annoying if you were trying to do it on your own, it's not that big of a difference, even though it looks super different.
And the other thing is there's going to be a lot of, I'm not going to say misinformation, because I'm going to assume it's well-intentioned, but partial information or not complete information when it comes to this filing season. So double, triple check your work.
My first time with the new law.
My DMs are open. I responded to someone that was asking me, hey, so I want to buy this house, but can you tell me how property taxes are determined and assessed? And I was like, well, Sonny, that's a very complicated question. And so I'll do my best to kind of answer it in brief, but if it's something like that, I can try to answer it best I can. I can't give you, specific advice just because of that. I'm here to be a resource if you have questions on it. And then I guess we'll throw to open questions to the chat.
Yeah, I mean, we can see if any questions come in on this, or just in general. Give it a couple seconds, but
I will say, Galen threw a tweet out, so let us know if there's any specific topic you want us to cover in the coming weeks.
Yes. It is the end of the year. Ernest and I are dealing with a bunch of end of year stuff plus the holidays, so we have shows that we can do, but if there are things that you are particularly looking to see, you can make our lives a bit easier by telling us what it is so that we can talk about it.
Yep. Call for any clients or anyone who knows any clients of ours. Get us some numbers, damn it. Please. I had someone message me the other day, top line and bottom line. And so I can work with that. I can do a projection. If you tell me like, this is how much I made, this is how much I think I'll have in expenses, and I can project from there, and at least it's something. So get us that. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving.
Yes. I ate a lot of smoked meat, which I was a big fan of. So Button Mash Vixen asked, do they still have the state taxes being able to be written off with federal?
And the answer is kind of. So what they did with this is they capped it, meaning there's a limit to how much you can take. So what they called this is the SALT, S-A-L-T, state and local taxes, and the cap is $10,000. Now the key thing to note is this is the sum of all of your state and local taxes. So depending on where you live,
county, potentially city, county, state.
Yeah. So if you live in New York City, for example, you pay New York City income tax, you pay New York State tax. If those combined is say 15,000, you're only able to take 10,000.
It's a big hit for high income earners in high income tax states.
And the old rules, this hasn't changed, is you're only able to take state income taxes or state sales tax. So what is a moon sub doing here?
There are so many of them.
There's so many of them. So here's the thing, though, with state and local taxes.
Here, we can get a bigger face, by the way. We don't need this anymore, do we?
You can only take state income taxes or state sales tax. So that hasn't changed. So let's talk about kind of doomsday scenario. Say you're in California, you pay state income tax, you pay state sales tax. You can only take one of those. You also have your high real estate taxes. And all of those may sum up to, I don't know, $22,000, $24,000. I can tell you an exact client base that I have this change destroys. They're single. They are W-2 employees working in and around LA or San Francisco. They're esports pros. And so while they're working there, they're getting California taxes withheld. And you're, whatever esports pro, and you're making 120, 150, 200,000, right? Or even 80,000, because they do well for themselves. And you pay 15, 16,000 in California taxes, you're going to pay a lot more on the federal side. And one thing you should be doing, especially if you have a W-2 job, like if you're working as an employee and you do this as a hobby or a side hustle, you should be checking your withholding on your W-2, because they may not have updated your withholding table in time. And so your refund or amount owed might be in a little bit of flux because of they didn't push those out until mid-year. There's that.
It's also a much bigger incentive to defer income into something like a 401k, because this tax law does, in theory, sunset, although we have a tendency to make tax laws permanent. But this does sunset. So it was over 10 years, I think it was. Oh, 7 years. That's right. It was over 7 years that this tax law goes away, because they could only sell it for that long, honestly, because the numbers look so bad on it. That they could only...
Well, no, what the rule was. So this is the...
Those are bullshit get around needing the votes.
Sort of. So they made the corporate tax cuts permanent, and they made the individual changes temporary, because if a tax cut does not pay for itself, you can't make it permanent. It has to sunset after 7 years. So they said that the corporate tax cut will lead to growth, therefore it will pay for itself. But we said we wouldn't be political. And the individual changes, they weren't able to make the math work to make them a permanent change. So that's why...
It's bad when you can't make your own math work. Like, there's a lot you can do to mess with that math.
There's a lot you can do. And part of the reason why you see some of these, like Galen alluded to earlier, the capping on state and local taxes. some various other things they did to try to limit how much you can take in terms of write-offs, where you could before, the entertainment tax as an example. They did that so that there would be less of a tax, like revenue generation cut. That's what taxes are, they're revenue to the government. So they did some of those things to try to make the math work.
Yep.
So that's something, you should factor in. I kind of lost the thread there.
Oh, I started off by saying it's more of an incentive, therefore, to defer income.
Oh, right.
If your state and local tax hit is a bigger impact on you than the reduced tax rate, which if you're employed, it's probably closer, right? If you're a W-2 employee somewhere versus self-employed, because of the qualified business income deduction. But anyways, these temporary tax law changes, currently marked as temporary, whatever, definitely make for, especially year one, a lot of potential for confusion and again, like Ernest said, not ill-intentioned misinformation, but it's a time where more is in flux than normal, and taxes are already a situation where I tend to not see phenomenally accurate, detailed information on Twitter, for instance. So I would be a little more careful this tax season, just because so many more things are changing than normal.
For perspective on that, so if you discount the Bush tax cuts, the second George Bush, so from Obama to the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, we had 10 years of the same, that was it. Tax code was the tax code. We hammered that for 10 years. The Bush tax cuts, there were some unique carve-outs here and there, but for the most part, all that changed when Obama came in.
The tax nation attacked.
The Fire Nation attacked. Is the tax rates changed? So all that changed was the underlying math. None of the forms changed really. None of the fundamentals really changed. So the
formula stayed the same. They just subbed a variable, basically.
Exactly, and so we've been working under the same form and the same general principles for, and I don't want to exaggerate, maybe 16 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so, and part of the reason too is they passed this in the last week of 2017. So you couldn't do any planning for it.
Handwritten notes in the margins.
And it got passed. And so the IRS is very behind in getting everything implemented. That's why normally you'd have a finalized version of the 1040 at this point, as to what to expect. You'd have the kind of decisions made on various odds and ends, but they're still, I don't think they have finalized their guidance on the qualified business income deduction yet. So that's still in proposal.
Be nice to Ernest come tax time. He will be busy.
I'll be busy trying to figure it all out. But that's the thing, is that you're going to hear, and because of the nature of social media, you're going to hear a lot of various things gain traction, and they're not necessarily going to be completely accurate, or it may be based on...
They may be accurate to that person.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? They may be totally relevant to that person and totally irrelevant to you. And that's the harder part, especially with all of these changes.
Yep.
So that's what I had. We're right at 50 minutes. Ernest, was there anything else?
Not that I can think of. Let us know your suggestions on what you want us to cover for the rest of the year. I think we've got 3 shows.
Let's see. We've got next week. Then the following week, I'm not around on Monday because I'm coming back from Viewboat, actually.
Oh, that's fun.
The week after that we have, and then the week after that is Christmas Eve, so I'm not going to be around because we'll be with my wife's family.
And the week after that is New Year's Eve. So
yes.
So we may be a little sporadic here. We may do kind of like a year-end Q&A summary maybe if we don't get a better suggestion. So feel free to ask us questions that we can discuss. Don't give us your, social security number or anything like that, or anything like specific to your situation. General questions only. All right, Galen, what fun stuff do you have this week?
This week is, for me, fun stuff. This week's kind of a catch-up week because of Thanksgiving being so slow. So I get to do the super fun thing of going to the people who said, especially at TwitchCon, hey, this sounds really interesting. Like, we should see if it makes sense to work together. And then I get to go to them and be like, all right, I'm finally back. There's no fires. Thanksgiving is done,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, and be like, so you said this, and there's a month left in the year, and there's a lot to get done before the end of the year. Let's work together. And hope that they actually like respond to my email or DM instead of just crickets.
Yeah.
Although there probably won't be a ton of that because I've only got the 2 slots left. So, but anyways, that's what my week looks like. Honestly, it's like really unscheduled. But then there's that. And then the other fun thing is that my wife. Ooh, I got a boop. My wife is doing her choir concert this weekend, or Friday night and Saturday afternoon-ish, and I'm going to one of them, and it's always fun to watch her do that because she really enjoys it.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I've got some UNLV games to attend. We're playing Valparaiso and Cincinnati.
Oh my God, I totally forgot. It's the big game. Sorry, go on.
Oh, that's right. USC UCLA's this weekend, right?
No, it was last. No. That was 2 weekends ago. Cal Stanford.
Yeah.
It got rescheduled because of the fire. The campfire
Gotcha.
made the field conditions so bad that they didn't play.
You guys got a chance?
Maybe. Stanford's so bad this year that we've got a shot.
Gotcha.
It would be a weird year where we beat Stanford and USC. So I'd be totally on board with that. But I would never expect it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
Valparaiso, though.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, UNLV is turned the corner after losing the first game. They look all right, but the offense is really bad. So that's basically doing nothing but tax planning and trying to run down clients for numbers. So again, get me your numbers if you're a client.
Yeah, I'll be on clients for that as well. Anyways, all right. Who are you? Tell us.
I am Ernest Jones. Let's see what is it? What's the command?
Probably just Ernest. There
That's
you go.
me. There's my Twitter. DMs are open if you have kind of a tax question at all. If you need assistance or anything, let me know. Or if you just want to talk about why Mokuba is the best character on Yu-Gi-Oh, well, let's have that conversation.
Yu-Gi-Oh?
Listen, it's just a random thing to pop into my mind.
Fair enough. I'm Galen Herbst-Cortina. I'm a financial planner. Got the info down there, it looks like, for Twitter. And yeah, I will be doing the same thing in terms of tracking down clients' numbers because I have had I've had the pleasure of trying to get people to do that all year and finally getting them to actually do it. We'll see. So yeah, hit us up on Twitter if you do have questions that come up, and also hit us up on Twitter if you've got ideas for future shows that you would like to see. We're gonna hop off now. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Have a good night, everybody.